Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Humaning. I'm so excited. This podcast is just a long time coming, and the intention is to help us become the masterpiece, the best masterpiece that we are here to be and to embody and to make this life and this human journey as delicious and juicy as possible, even though the time is very challenging. So today I have a beautiful, beautiful, radiant soul, Brooklin Ray. For those of you that know that I just love talking to her, she's such an immaculate, pure divine conduit. She brings through such a potent information through. So you guys are in for the treat. So without further ado, welcome, Brooklin.
Thank you. So happy to be here at this most an omnipotent time that we're in as this, the collective of humanity. It is a ripe season.
Yeah. So instead of going, to which we will dive into how's your journey coming forward, but I would love to start just by how, share with us what's your perception of auspicious. What is it? What does that mean for us right now?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question because, really what I've recognized in sort of the repetitive nature of bringing forth on a regular basis, wow, the energies, wow, like it just keeps getting more wow, and yet there's still something really human-like and fun about the surprise of each day and how each day is bringing such a new burst and a new flavor and a new system of powerful energy forward and present, within our experience here. And so I say auspicious, and then I love that you bring that forth to further explore, because really, I feel like so much of what's taking place right now, and it always has been to some degree, but really amplified right now, is that all things are auspicious, and they always have been, right? The dissolve of separation is taking place in unparalleled ways, and what I mean by that is many things and infinitely beyond what could be described in this conversation, likely, but really a huge dissolve in the binary codex, the dualistic, polarizing fabric, if you will, of our collective experience here and of this matrix. So as that continues to dissolve, and uniquely so for each of us, right, or uniquely perceived, I should say, right, for each of us, and felt, and and so forth, right, because we all have our own unique blueprints and ways of navigating this and perceiving it. But as these huge systems of solar frequencies come through, and all different types of diamond frequencies and so forth are showering in and opening through, new astrological alignments and so forth, there's a huge and significant dissolve of separation, the illusion of separation, the separation that has been long perceived and woven into our experience as humans through the binary codex, the bi-wave codex, the polarity, the dualism of what has been most of our experiences thus far. So auspicious, so as this takes place more and more and more, and the veils of illusion begin to melt more and more for each one of us, we come into what has always been, which is there is no separation. And everything is auspicious, and there is no separation between spirituality and spirit body, right? In our physical reality, our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, everything is a one, has always been underneath the layers of perception of separation and duality. Everything has been a unified field, right? Just kind of waiting the opportunity to come back into the greater and the full sort of awareness, self-realization, awareness, and embodiment of that. So I feel like I love that you brought that terminology up, because really it holds such a different meaning. It feels like each day, the level of unity and the access to unity and the greater dissolve of separation, it feels more and more palpable, more and more accessible, more potent.
I love that. And at the same time, when I'm listening to you, I can feel into, my own experience, and I trust for many. I think that this separation, the veil is dissolving And while we are still being physical in this life, you know, and the system, even though we know the metrics are crumbling or disintegrating, but we are still very much in this structure. And it's almost what I felt immediately was that intensity, and at times almost like, yeah, I can tap easier into what is, you know, the true essence, the light, or the higher realm. You know, some people say 5D or 7D.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the physical life doesn't seem to be easier, right? Because so how do we navigate this? So we can have a conversation with Yeshua, but the next minute I'm just like struggling with certain reality.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah, I love it. I love that you bring that up, because by far this has been the most humbling and intense time in the physical body, in this radiant and amazing physical temple that we house, right? That houses our eternal selves. It's super intense right now. And what I would say to that is, yeah, as the dissolve is taking place, right? And just to sidestep for just a second here, like, you know, a lot of times when people hear that, and, you know, and they're still really working through a lot of cataclysmic timeline programs within their imprints of their bodies, you know, and they hear about the crumble and the dissolve, it's like, you know, they go to those places of like, what is that going to be like? What is it going to look like? You know, really, you know, from my vantage point, the greatest timeline bundle, if you will, that I perceive is not a cataclysmic timeline as has been experienced many times throughout the experience, right? The evolution of humanity. Rather fading out, you know, as the collective, you know, brings their consciousness domain, right? As the collective brings it into the higher frequency bands and access to higher dimensional, you know, higher dimensional bandwidths on a consistent, you know, basis, if you will, right? So in other words, to your point, we can right now tap into higher dimensional frameworks. We can receive, you know, different information and frequencies and so forth from that. But when we talk about the dissolve of the third dimensional matrix as the collective experience, and moving into, let's just say for all intents and purposes, the that's taking, you know, that's creating sort of the foundational bandwidth of participation for the collective of humanity in the in the fifth dimension, right? Just as right now, the general foundation still primarily is the third, right? And so people think, oh, there's going to be this cataclysmic timeline, and, you know, and the crumbling, and it's not that, from my vantage point and perception in this now moment, it's not that extreme. It's as we continue to participate, to receive, to, you know, move into the invitation of dropping the layers of denser energies and dualistic programs and separation, you know, and we embody more and more clarity, we embody more of our I am presence, you know, our just reality shifts and things, you know, and then all of a sudden we're like, whoa, hold on a second. You know, I'm not in Kansas anymore, but everything, you know, there hasn't been some huge, and I will say to that, everybody does uniquely curate their blueprint prior to coming in. So some people may have certain experiences that feel very cataclysmic to them at certain times, right? Because that's what they've created to experience as part of the death and rebirth process. But generally speaking, I don't see an event that's going to take place, right? That, as has been mentioned many times, it's a more of an organic and smooth transition, whereby you're no longer tuning to this radio station. Now you're tuning to this, you know, this one, and, you know, and there might be some interesting, you know, glitchy type, you know, witnessing of strange circuitry as it shifts from, you know, the whole collective, you know, shifts, if you will. There might be some very bizarre things that take some people by surprise in terms of like seeing the matrix as the matrix and so forth. But for the most part, it's not, you know, so I feel like bringing this in, it helps a lot of people dissolve a lot of the fight or flight programs that might be, you know, running if front and center within their consciousness, you know, within the subconscious of like, I don't want to let go. I don't want that, you know, it's like, no, really, it's a beautiful thing. It's a peaceful thing, so, but yeah, it's as this huge transition's taking place, as the dissolve of separation's taking place, how does that happen? Or how can the collective of humanity come into, this collectively embodied higher template of unity? Well, to be able to embody that is to recognize what exists within our own unique energetic field that's in direct duality and polarity to unity. So in other words, we're feeling a lot of chaos, we're feeling a lot of projection and people projecting, and all sorts of things taking place, a lot of physical discomfort and strange things happening, and energetic highs and energetic lows. And it's like, whoa, I feel like the Nutty Professor, like, whoa, whoa, like one day, and that's pretty for the course, if you will, because for us to come into greater harmony and greater unity is for that which exists within us to flush to the surface, for us to determine and to decide as the choosers of our choices and the creators of our reality. Do I choose to hold on to this and continue to identify as this and participate within this? Or do I recognize that it's coming up because I haven't, I'm being given this great opportunity right now to choose differently, to let it go, but it's not so easy to discern that and to recognize that when these things are coming up, they're bringing up some really deeply rooted and often disowned and disassociated emotions, and big feelings are coming up for people.
Yeah, I have actually two directions, but I will go with this one first, like, because I just wanted to share the personal experiences that I would have, like you say, like the days I just feel so inspired. I thought, okay, I'm gonna tapping into my higher self, and then there are days, like for example, today before we record this conversation, I just had a crash, like emotional breakdown, and I just felt so exhausted. It's almost like there's this fine line between walking toward the embodiment of I am, and at the same time there are some human programming, like whether it's ancestral collective is still playing out. So I'm just like having this dance, and then at some point I just feel so exhausted. And so would could and I feel that's what we are going through, right? Because like more people are opening up to, like, okay, the highest timeline, our divine blueprint. And it's just not so black and white, right? And because we are still continuously clearing and releasing, transmuting so many, template imprint, right? Ancestral, collective, personal, soul. And so how do we navigate this? Because I know you would say, just come back to the present. Is there any advice you could share? Like, how can we navigate this dance with more grace and ease?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that you keep bringing in the dance, because that's something that keeps coming up a lot. Like, the invitation to dance more, to bring in movement, to allow our, to go back to, and something that, maybe has been on your heart, or has come in, we've received the messaging for many, many times, and we kind of just push it down, which is like, participating in qigong and and tai chi and these different yogic practices and these ancient practices that hold so much wisdom, because they assist us. They're created to really bring people, all the bodies, but through the physical body, bring us back into balance and harmony, to restore, the circuitry to feel sustained and nourished, and, and keeping the consistent flow of our chi, right, of our life eternal within. So I feel like never before are we being more called to moving the physical body, and and grounding and earthing and connecting with the elements, and and again, like really really understanding and coming into deeper relationship with how we can come into greater unity and union with the elements. And a lot of the ways in which we can do it, as mentioned, are through, Qigong and different, and also tapping into our own playful inner genius. And maybe I've done this in many lifetimes before, right? Maybe I can play around with it. Maybe I can, get some basic foundational remembrance of what these systems are and how they the general mechanics of them. And then maybe if you're someone who doesn't like to follow a system and, because there are a lot of people, that feel that way, and I get it. So then maybe it's like, okay, well, I'm going to create or remember and dial into, my own way of doing it. And, dancing, of course, as we know, can be really fun and joyful. It can also be really scary. And some people have come into this lifetime really forgetting how to connect with their physical bodies and movement in the flow. So, it is an opportunity, to navigate and to move through the energies that are present here. And also, it's a beautiful way that we can incorporate the breath. We can incorporate ways to basically move out the old energies and bring in the new. It's a great way to create neuroplasticity, to rewire. So let's say you've been really kind of beating yourself up, feeling unworthy, and, a lot of judgment programs, like an ancestral imprint, perhaps, right, is coming in for us. We hear a mom's voice. We're like, man, like, so, finding, okay, what is it that I want to let go of in this? Where is it stored in my body? What is it that I want to let go of in this? What do I no longer want to believe of this program, of this statement, or to connect to? What do I no longer want to feel, and feel into the body? And what is it that I do want to feel? And what is it that I do want to bring in and replace with this? So we create a way to breathe and, and move out into the full dissolve, right? Into the full divine dissolve, knowing that when we create a practice like this and we call in for maybe perhaps showering flow of divine transmutational light, right? Because some people are like, I don't want to just throw my stuff out there, then someone else is going to get it. Really, when we set the intention and, to call forth the dissolve of that which no longer serves us, and, and we're connecting with our divine within, our highest self, and connecting with our highest self, oversoul, whomever one chooses to connect with, the source of all creation. There's a divine intelligence and light and, and so forth that comes forth to be the catcher's mitt, if you will, and the transmuter of this, right? So letting, breathing out what we no longer desire to participate in and to identify as, and maybe breathing in and igniting and, and connecting with it. So yeah, it can be fun, and like we can laugh at ourselves, and it brings a lot of opportunity to shift energies really quickly. And a magical ingredient that came in and, and desires to be highlighted here, which might be triggering to many right now. And believe me, I get it. I just went into the womb for a good 8 days of like deep cellular and solar alchemy of releasing grief and all sorts of stuff in my physical body. Has been going through some really interesting things. So I get it. And sometimes when we're going through these types of purging, right, shedding the old and almost like the caterpillar, right, going into the chrysalis and like dissolving, really dissolving, right? The ego is like, and we don't want to hear perhaps someone bring in the invitation of joy. It's like joy, who can think of joy at a time like this, right? But the truth of it is we are the chooser of our choices. And every now and moment, if we choose to remember and we choose to come back front and center, present, within, we are the divine, we are the infinite creator, right? We are a fractal of that, right? And so we have the opportunity in every now and moment to choose joy, even if it's the joy in the death of something taking place. And the thing about this is that becomes more and more abundantly clear is that the thinking mind, the ego mind, is the initial sort of receptor of determining, if you will, whether or not to participate in this joy, right? And it tries to participate in the joy from an intellectually understood identity of joy being this. But really, joy is a multiversal, multidimensional, living consciousness field of light, sound, and plasma. So if we open our hearts and open ourselves to the greater awareness and curiosity and participation within joy as such, then we can recognize there's a deep alchemical presence and opportunity and the invitation. We can call that joy in, we can breathe it in, we can feel it in, we can allow it in, right? And we don't really have to do anything else beyond that. And we can begin to curiously observe and witness how things begin to shift and change. And does it make everything go away? Maybe, if that's what's supposed to happen. But more likely what it does is it brings us out of contraction. It brings us into deeper presence and remembrance of who we are as the witnessing presence. It gives us, the spaciousness and down regulates our nervous system, and allows for us to more freely navigate anything really that we choose. Yeah. How are we doing?
It was just so funny, like when you were talking about this living consciousness, this living field of consciousness of joy. I can just feel like showering down, like to us, the audience as well, like the field. And actually, before you said that, there is a voice in my head. Maybe it's mine, it's someone else's as well. It's like, yeah, joy, but I can be joyful now, but what about the rent? Like I need to pay the kids need to pay the school. And it's almost like you said, sometimes it already will shift our perception, and then we take different action. But then for some people, it's almost like, okay, I feel joy, but then the next moment I see the bill and the children or my parents, aging parents. So how do we end again?
Yeah, well, it's then it's up to us to choose and to feel into, do I want to choose joy again? What would happen if I allowed myself to bring in that frequency of joy, and maybe even let's why limit it to one? Let's go into the conscious, the multiversal, multidimensional consciousness field of peace, and and that of abundance, and that of love, and that of of compassion. We can create an elixir, and what takes place when we allow ourselves to come into a level of participation with everything in life from this place of curiosity. And okay, am I choosing to be serious, to wear my serious suit right now? Like, wait a second, I can't be joyful. I'm talking about the rent. I'm talking about this, right? But we can. And maybe it's those subconscious and conscious levels of and beliefs that are playing out of the seriousness of it, and the fear of failure, and the fear of the survival programs, basically, right? That lead us into this, this is not a joyous, this can be joyous and this can't be joyous, but everything can be joyous. And the more we play around with that, and the more we bring that in, then the more we start to see the layers of what all is participating. And the more the layers, of our participation within the veils of illusion begin to dissolve. And then we start seeing some magical things take place, because then we start seeing some quantum leaps and quantum jumps taking place. Like, okay, all of a sudden, everything's synchronistically aligning. And I have someone calls me up and asks me, can I do this thing? And and now I have enough flow of abundance for 3 months, right? And in finding the joy in, witnessing the way that let's say you brought up like a mom, a mom, finding the joy in, the unique blueprint of, let's say, a parent or someone who has, we've been at odds with, or who has long been our greatest guru and teacher, because they come down on us, right? It's like, okay, we start seeing the joy in that. I see the joy, how I chose to play the victim. She chose to play the victimizer. Okay. Yeah. What if I start seeing this from, this playful space of, I created this blueprint. Now I'm down here in the blueprint, and I'm being given the opportunity to remember that I'm the creator of the blueprint. And not only that, but I'm sovereign and I'm free beyond, my participation in the illusion. And the more that I show up and I allow myself to participate in this way, the more all that dissolves, and the more that I start getting into the flow of what I've heard and I've seen people talking about, and which is life becomes this effortless flow with all sorts of layers and levels of magicals sprinkled into it. And it is, but the key ingredient, I feel like, in it is many things. But beyond, before we even get to the joy, maybe, and all, is surrender, right? Surrendering into, okay, I surrender. I surrender into the flow of everything. I come out of resistance. I'm letting go of the weightedness and the resistance. What am I resisting? What am I fearing? Who's showing up? Start asking ourselves these questions so we can start unwinding, the rubber ball that we've put ourselves in, right? And okay, wait. Oh, and sometimes it's just a couple little questions that we ask, that we show up and ask ourselves, and then we're like, we shift ourselves out of whatever it is that we're in, right? Things start to, okay, I have a little more space, a little more grace, a little more flow.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I just wanted to share that earlier when I had some emotional moment. Second, that when we were talking about joy, and then the question come with, all this human question, right? Challenges. And then I actually have this sense of like, gosh, like this compassion, like the compassion I ought to have for myself. And, so does everyone. It's like, gosh, yeah, it's not easy. It's like, I think this is like the advanced level of the game. And it just gets so real when we, even when we are on this journey for a long time and we know all these tools, but then there are moments we thought we need to know better, and then we forget, and then we are so deep in in this rubber ball thing.
Mm.
And I guess so it's almost like part of me, I think, by myself, just like, oh my God, like, the love for the human me just came through. I guess that was very tiny like a brief moment. And I know that you also talk about really the compassion for ourselves, right? Because I feel that is one of the, I would say, difficult, but then exciting opportunity for us to practice and to really embody, like, what does that compassion for ourselves would do?
Yeah. And I love that you bring that in, because a lot of times people have a preconceived concept or notion of what compassion is. And what I would say to that is, because of everything is up leveling and our access to everything, including this massive consciousness domain, again, this huge collective system, and radiant system of light, sound, and plasma, pure source light, sound, and plasma exists within reach. And thank you, source of all creation, for that. It is within the reach of our experience here in this third dimensional construct. And yet it's so far beyond any confinement or, limitations of this third dimensional construct, right? In other words, again, it's an infinitely faceted system of pure source unified consciousness, if you will. It's a tri-wave, a trinity codex of immaculate compassion. So there've been a lot of different programs, through education, through different systems of organized religion, et cetera, where perhaps there have been some great intellectually imprinted limitations, even, or maybe even some distortions, we'll just say, around what compassion is. So if we let go of all of that, as though we're a brand new baby in each and every now moment, right? A childlike innocence, childlike curiosity, as though we've never even heard of compassion before, as we've never even met compassion before, right? And we drop out of here, because here is going to always try to find a reference point and try to, as soon as we do that, there's no good or bad to that, right? That's part of the human experience. But as soon as we start to do that, we're directing our consciousness as source into something that is a finite system and perhaps a limiting system. So drop into our hearts and call in compassion, breathe it in, as though it's showering us and coming in and enveloping us, nourishing us, and start to gain a greater, excuse me, awareness and participation and alchemization through compassion that way. Because to really know it is to embody it, and to embody it is to allow ourselves to just melt into it and immerse ourselves within it and expand ourselves beyond this, right? Beyond the thinking mind. And when we start to feel and ignite and participate in compassion in this way, whoa, right? Big things start taking place. We start to feel, again, this sense of spaciousness. We start to feel, if this is what compassion feels like, generally speaking, and of course, this is, every situation is unique, then we start to feel, because compassion is, is a way sharer and a way shower, right? And so it's going to bring into our awareness where we're holding on to beliefs and systems and feelings that are in direct duality or polarity to compassion, right? So I bring this in because sometimes the thinking mind, when we've gotten built such a deep relationship with it, and it feels safe and familiar, sometimes, someone might have this experience. Well, Brooklin said, call it in and start feeling it, and now I'm feeling this judgment inside, and it's okay. It's not that's what the compassion is. It's that the compassion is sharing and showing you how you can embody more as the compassion, and how you can embody more as the compassion is to let go of perhaps the self-judgment and, right? And. So it's a consciousness field that's going to assist us, but we have to still show up and, and participate in it, right? There's nothing here that's going to save us, right? There's no savior outside of us. The compassion is going to remind us of who we are at the core essence of, of our divinity, that we are compassion, right? So it's okay. I call it in. And then what shows up, who shows up, how can I release that? Do I want to keep holding on to these beliefs, or do I want to let them go? Right. And I feel as though, there's just so many ways in which we can participate in these massive systems of source consciousness that are here and awaiting for us to remember, and to participate with them in this way.
Yeah. So beautiful. I just want to continue to bathe in this field. I don't know what it is. Okay, I'm just going to relax. I love it. It's just so beautiful. Yeah. I remember like many years ago when I was in some workshop, we were actually guided to the dimension of freedom. So maybe is maybe just different terminology. Is that the same? Like freedom is also a field of consciousness, or like unified field?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are infinite fields of pure source, unifying fields of consciousness, right? That are kind of, from my languaging and my vantage point, and what, how I'm shown by my highest self is, there are these pillars of Christos consciousness, of, what has most often been referred to as Christ consciousness, beyond any, physical construct or religious construct. exists this massive multiversal creational field of pure unified source consciousness. And how I see it is it's threaded throughout every single system of creation to have ever been created, and uniquely so that it can hold, this field of remembrance, if you will, that within every fractal of creation is the access to all of creation, right? The sum total, the whole, right? So within this massive system of Christos, consciousness, unified consciousness, are these pillars of divine codex, we'll say, or fields of consciousness that are available to assist one in coming into the full remembrance of themselves as source beyond any dualistic programming and any separational programming, right? And these pillars are how I perceive them as archetypes, peace, love, joy, compassion, grace, unconditional love, joy, and ecstasy, right? So we all have within our original, from my vantage point, within the original crystalline architecture that lies dormant primarily within our current bodies until it no longer does. And as we know, it's coming back online very rapidly for many. The more and more we choose to, and it's not this linear of a process, but this is one way to look at it, if you will, or explore it. The more we choose to and feel called forth to call upon these pillars or these archetypes, these fields of unified consciousness, such as love and peace and compassion and joy, and we call them in, and freedom, we call them in, in such a statement perhaps as I am immaculate freedom, I am, or I am freedom, I am, right? I love I am statements. They're concise. The universe knows exactly it's very clear messaging, right? It's like, boom. The more we do that, yes, we're calling something into greater participation, which from a linear process is perceived as something outside of ourselves, right? And that's because there's still parts of us that we're identifying with that perceive everything out there as separate from everything here, right? That is still participating in the human experience of duality until they're not. So we call it in as though it's something outside of ourselves. Okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because the bottom line is when we call it in, no matter how we perceive it, whether we perceive it as something coming outside or we come into the greater awareness that it was always here the entire time, right? We're directing our consciousness as the eternal source beings that we are into participation with it. So as soon as we begin to do that, it's starting to dissolve the layers of separation and duality within, and it's starting to resurrect its own unique expression of itself that already exists within the potential of each cell within us, right? And so then we become more and more the embodiment of freedom. And we remember our consciousness, as free of illusion, fear, suffering, separation. The more we direct our awareness and our energy and our life force energy right into it. So how we get to that point of self-realization and freedom and remembrance may not be as important as getting just the simple part of getting there, right? And yet it's all important. And we, as the eternally curious and infinite creators, we are, we want to know everything, right? We want to know, ooh, what did it feel like to feel this? And now what does it feel like to feel that? And, what did I learn along the way? So as intense as it is right now, and it's intense, like I had a couple, excuse me, a couple experiences this last week where I was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, like, whoa, you've got to be, like really, really testing, the depths of that absolute surrender and inner trust. And, and it's like, okay, but I know, right? It's like, that's the answer. That's always the answer. How can I surrender more? How can I let go more? How can I trust more? And as soon as as painful and, and like, as it can be at moments, as soon as I do that, now it's not like little fairies come out of the closet and start bringing flowers. And that would be great. Just saying. But it's like, okay, I can start to feel the pendulum, so, okay, let me breathe. I surrender. Show me. How can I trust more? How can I surrender more? What is, show me, who's showing up, what's ready to let go. Show me highest self, like show me what's, what am I missing here? So yeah, we're absolutely entering into one of the most advanced levels of this human video game that we're playing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me look at the time. So I just love our conversation. I can like talk to you forever.
Me too.
I feel like when we surrender, which at some point, and when I had enough pain, I would just say, okay, I surrender. But I guess that curiosity, I would say it's curiosity, maybe also from the mind, is like we work through a lot of the programs, right? Like I think the 101 is that, okay, we heal this worthiness or self-judgment, like all from childhood and different lifetime and collectively ancestral collective as well. So how does that work? It's almost like people can do 100 workshop just working on healing your worthiness, your self-judgment, like however theme it is, right? Or the ability to receive, right? Because many of us just such a giver, but so many imprints. So I guess the question, how do I formulate that, is that how do we truly let go and really let that another layer dissolve again and again? Because the healing is not like this one chunk and then we just chop it 10% this time. Another workshop, we chop it another 5. And so by the 10th workshop, everything is done.
Yeah. I mean, some people actually have that blueprint, and good for them.
I want that too, please, guys.
Well, you didn't want it, okay? And you can't have buyer's remorse down here. Or should I say creator's remorse? No. So yeah, here's something very humbling, and that, every day I feel like I show up and in some way, I surrender to knowing no thing so that I may know everything. And by that, truly under the layers of the spoken word is, I let go. I let go. I surrender. I choose to continue to show up and listen to the messaging of the dissolve, meaning the integration of the limitations of the egoic construct, so that I can allow myself the freedom to curiously explore without expectations, without attachments, whatever I, as the creator of my blueprint, and the director of this lightship, have put into place to experience next. Right. And I don't remember lots of details of where I was and, and what time of the day it was and where I was living. But I'd say it was probably a good 7 or 8 years ago, maybe longer. I hit like a big nugget, if you will, of the surrender point, because I was like, when I started to awaken, I had pre-set within my surrender point, which I call it, literally, that's what I call it, right? When I threw my hands up in the air and I was like crying and said to the source universe, okay, I don't have the answers. I just show me what I need to do to find, internal peace. And I heard an audible voice say, it's time to meditate, and I was like, I don't know how to meditate, wham, wham, wham. But then I started meditating, right? There was a pocket or, of surrender and trust that I had dialed into my blueprint, just in that moment, in that experience moving forward. But really, as I started to meditate, and as really big systems of, of self-created density began to dissolve in, greater spaciousness and light began to resurrect within. And, then I feel like this happens for so many of us, right? I'm like, it was like an unquenchable thirst, like for reading and, okay, let's go. Like, cause you start to feel your authentic self, right? Beyond, the identity as the ego. And you're like, I just want to break free of this prison. I just want to get the heck out of here. Excuse me. And so, so you go through this period, and I think this is like, it could never be a one size fits all, but I feel like this is a very general experience, and the stages of ascension, if you will, and then you're like, come on, where's the end point? I'll do whatever I need to do. Like, let's go. I mean, let's get this party started. Let's get, I've already, I surrendered, right? I told the universe, I get it. I created this. Now I'm creating it. Like, beam me up. Right. And, and then that starts to create a resistance, right? And that starts to create an expectation and a series of expectations and a series of attachments, because we're filtering now, and we're trying to define, because that's what we do, right? We're trying to figure it out down here. And now we're trying to define our path of infinite expansion and infinite creation anew. And we're trying to fit it into the constructs of the end game, which is, part of our linear programming. And there's no end game. We're eternal. And and beyond, the constructs and the participation within this linear time construct, and the sort of the illusion that we're going to die, and that we have this limited amount of time. And, beyond that, we're like sitting back up there as our oversoul. We're like, yeah, oh, when's she gonna get it? Oh, when's she gonna get it? It's like, girl, you've got time. Relax. Like, have fun. Doesn't she get it? She's not gonna transcend this until she surrenders, and she gets every little juicy nugget that she sent out to get. And it's like, but we don't get that initially, right? And we're like, no, come on, let's go. Like, I get it. So it was about 7 years ago, probably a good 3 or 4 years into, and like, I just remember my highest self came in and was like, yeah, you need to let go of your expectation and attachment, and just surrender even more deeply into the presence of all the beauty and the gifts and the profundity that is brought forth in every experience. And knowing that if your experience of the next experience is meant to be of similar nature to this experience here, and, just trust and surrender and know that was that, and this is this. That was then, this is now. So if you need to go, and if you need to have, 1,000 experiences where you have, view yourself as unworthy, or, in the flow of scarcity, then so be it. And it's not to suggest that what you did in the previous one, in way of dissolving some programs, ancestral imprints, wasn't part of, your evolution, because yes, it was. And now you have this experience, and this is part of it too. And so the more we embrace and we get excited, and so here, I'm going to throw this in, and this is another one that triggers people, but I'll tell you, it is a omnipotent fertilizer of magicals and miracles. Gratitude. I was finding the gratitude in the depths of the releasing of a lot of grief over the last few weeks. And it brings us to a richer and more accessible place of recognizing all the depths of expansion, all the richness, all, everything that we were, it opens us up to more clarity, of greater abundance of the, all the whys to the experience and so forth. So just when you think you've surrendered, surrender some more, because surrender is also a pillar of Christos. It's an archetype, and it's a living consciousness field And so again, call it in so we can remember that it's been here, right here, front and center all along, and to recognize where we can go even deeper, letting go of resistance, free floating and flying into the unknown, letting go of trying to figure out the end game, letting go of, and it's so sweet because surrender, as we know, in its most, or we come to know perhaps, is that it's not complacency and it's not giving up and it's not disassociating. There's an active level of presence and consciousness and participation that takes place in surrender. Surrender is, I am attuned and present, listening, feeling, right? And participating in my choice of surrendering even more. Otherwise, we're not truly surrendering, right? It's just another vehicle of our mind's creation that's come through to navigate away from discomfort or navigate away from the fear of the unknown and, right? So surrender is, I feel like, one of the biggest, brightest, most nourishing teachers, gurus, way sharers in this system of rebirth that we're in right now.
So beautiful. Thank you for creating this beautiful field. And I just couldn't think of I just couldn't be more grateful for how this conversation formed itself, because I think this is such a beautiful way to conclude this discussion. And really, it's almost like when we surrender, like what you are sharing is like things open up. And of course, not the mind want things to open up, so I surrender, right? But because I surrender, and then it's almost like the flow of life just occurs, just flows.
Yeah. And sometimes and oftentimes it is the mind, and the mind has to feel like it was my idea to surrender, right? And we don't care. We just want to focus our consciousness, into the greater embodiment of it. So if it has to be directed by the mind and the mind's agenda initially, great. The key to it is the actual directing of consciousness, the participation, and then the embodiment of it, right? And so one thing that I will just drop in as a departing nugget, if you will, is consistency, showing up for ourselves consistently, participating, and getting curious and, finding ways to really step in and show up, allow ourselves to build some really nourishing, like you're saying, juicy. I remember you started off, our conversation, like, this is how we receive the nourishing, juicy, ness of life, if you will, is even though we don't always feel like it, we'll create programs to find our way to get around it. We often default to, everybody's favorite scapegoat, which is, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. Well, that's not going to be working for so many anymore either, because there's a huge dissolve of how the linear time matrix has, and it will continue to transition into its new phases of expression too. So yeah, how can I, dissolve all the layers of resistance and surrender into showing up and daily participation and practice of, the things that are going to be most nourishing, most expanding, most joyful, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. I think this for me is joyful and it's juicy and delicious. So thank you so much for sharing your amazing fullness.
Love you. Thank you. Yeah. Always love our co-creations, and just sending so much love and nourishment and blessings and grace, and the deep unified cosmic hug to all that are gathered here. We're all one. We're all going through our unique expression of this experience right now, and so much love and compassion.
Yeah, so much love and compassion. And I will share your information below. So, looking forward to your next course. No pressure, of course, in the divine timing. And yeah, and so for those of you who deeply resonate or really feel like you benefit a lot, please do subscribe to the channel. Like I never said that before, but yay. And then, you will find more about Brooklyn's offering and, her amazing work on the description below. So thank you so much, Brooklyn. I love you so
Thank
much.
you. Love you, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.